Mission, the podcast, One Heart and Mind. I'm John Gonzalez, the Director of Communications here at the Catholic Diocese of Saginaw, joined by Erin Looby Carlson. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be with you here.
I should say the former Director of Communications here at the Diocese. So you had this job before me. We're going to get into your background because I'm really curious. We haven't spent a lot of time together, so I wanted to know a little bit more about your background. But it's a big day. It's a big month here for the diocese and for you and for the Pfaff family. As this story rolls out on a national level, the Mayo Clinic has obviously spread the word about this amazing, incredible face transplant. You've been at the very beginning of this story in the sense of chronicling Derek's story in our magazine, Great Lakes Bay Faith Magazine.
Yes. Great Lakes Bay Catholic, formerly Faith.
Yes.
I know. We were really putting you to work.
Great Lakes Bay Catholic.
Yes.
Woo. Anyway, but I really wanted to talk to you because you've been with this story. It's been a part of your life for the last, 4 years?
Yes. I was looking back. It was early January in 2021 when Lisa Pfaff, Derek's mom, reached out to me for the first time. Do you want me to go in?
Yeah, let's hear how this all happened.
Yeah, right in there. So first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to share. I'm usually more comfortable sitting in the seat you're sitting in, which is asking the questions versus answering them. But I'm really honored and
thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to share some of this. So it was early in January 2021, and I received a call from Lisa, and it's like any call. You don't really know what where the conversation is about, where it's going. So she began to tell me her story, and it was a lot to take in initially. Like I'm even just getting a little bit emotional thinking about that moment.
Do you remember the day? Like was it a Thursday? Was it raining? I mean,
it was like January 17th, 18th, 19th, somewhere right in there. And I remember taking the call, and as I began to understand what she was sharing with me, that we, as in the Catholic Diocese of Saginaw, really was her first call to share their story. So as we know, on March 5th of 2014. So on March 5th of 2014, Lisa and Jerry's son, Derek, attempted to end his life.
Yeah.
And so miraculously, he survived that attempt. But for the next 7 years after that, their life was going from hospital visit, stay, surgery, back home for care. Derek hadn't been out. He hadn't really left the home in 7 years. The family didn't really share. Obviously, there was immediate family and very close friends that were aware, but Derek hadn't shared his story publicly. Lisa hadn't been able to talk about it. She even shared that she couldn't get through the story without crying and breaking it down. So when she said that she saw an issue of, again, it was formerly Faith Magazine, it was sitting on the counter, and as a member of our Catholic parish in Harbor Beach, they received the magazine, and she said she just kind of kept looking at it, and she happened to see it. Our little pictures in there are so small, but she saw the picture of me next to the editorial, and she said she kept looking at it. It was like, you know what, I'm going to call, and this feels like a safe place.
Yeah.
The church feels like a safe place to begin to open up about what we've been through, what the challenges are in front of us, and the kind of help and support that we need to take the next step in the journey, which was the face transplant.
Did you get any sense at that time of like where the family was in their faith?
Very strong. So she has repeatedly shared that without their faith, they could have never, ever gotten through this.
Those 7 years, yeah.
Those 7 years. So even from the very immediate, like as soon as Lisa called 911 and alerted the hospital that her husband was on the way with Derek, the next call was to her parents and to go get the priest. Mm-hmm. So from those very, very early moments, the church accompany them, was there with them. Father Bill Spencer, who's no longer with us. We were able to interview him. We got to interview all the people who've been touched by this story throughout the year.
That video that you produced back in 2021, right?
Yeah.
That really chronicle it. It's like almost a 30-minute documentary on the whole thing. Those interviews are so compelling. The people telling their stories, and then to have it in addition to your article that ran in the magazine, right?
Yeah.
It really told a story of tragedy, but also of renewed faith in the sense that we're made for a purpose.
Oh, absolutely, without a question. And when you mentioned the video, our great partner, Chris Guildenstern from BCD, he stepped up and was like, early on, we talked about what we met with the bishop. I met with the bishop and asked, can we tell this as a video story in addition to a print version? And so we partnered with Chris. And early on, it became obvious this could be a lot longer than the 5-minute piece that we began to talk about. And so Chris he took away he alleviated any fear about what could the cost of this be, and he just said, all of my services are free of charge. So that's the kind of impact the family and the story has had on others. Obviously, when the story initially ran, the Catholic community, the greater community, was so incredibly generous.
What was life obviously for the family was probably just, dealing with the scope of what they've been able to do, the people they've been able to reach. But what about you here at the office? Was your phone ringing off the hook?
There were a lot of calls, a lot of people who were interested in knowing how they could support. Could they send things directly to the house? So we've really received just this incredible outpouring and desire of support. And then just even within my own circle, the family and friends who, and still to this day, will send messages. How's Derek doing? Where is he at in the process? When are we going to be able to hear an update? So just the continued care and concern for the family. And then just in being able to speak with Lisa, the lives that have been touched, the lives that have been saved, the support that she's been able to offer, and just them getting out there and telling their story. So here was another thing. Was early on when we were talking about the print story. So as I mentioned, Derek had not been out in public, really. People hadn't seen him since he graduated. So as part of the video, we went back to his high school. And so there were people that he was seeing for the first time and hadn't seen since he graduated high school. And just the emotional reaction that former teachers and coaches had. And just his heart, there's a couple of things that really stick out in my mind from those early days of doing the interviews. One was a comment from Jerry, his dad, who said, he said, this sounds so strange to say this, but Derek is more joyful now than he even was before this happened. So it just speaks to what the Holy Spirit, what the Lord has done in Derek's life, just in terms of, we heard from the doctors and obviously his parents who were every day since this happened, which Derek has no memory of any of it, by the way. I'm not sure if you knew that, but they say he has fought to live. So 50 plus surgeries, and to have a joyful heart and just be grateful to be alive, and this desire inside of him to just help other people and reach other people. So I'm a little bit all over the place.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, so early on, I asked the question are we going to be able to photograph? So this was before, obviously, going into the high school and all of that, but it's just an early conversation. Is he feel comfortable to be photographed? And so they had a conversation, and she said, yes, he's ready.
Wow.
And then it was from there, from telling the video story, being featured in the magazine, they took interviews locally, statewide, national interviews. They accepted a number of public speaking engagements and just have been able to connect on such a human and personal level with a lot of people.
And I know for you kept on the story. So in the current issue, the November-December of 2024 of Great Lakes Bay Catholic.
Putting you to work right away, John.
You have an update and the story of the face transplant.
Yeah.
We actually have a photo in the magazine, a couple photos of him and what he looks like today.
Yeah.
And what he looked like, before the before the accident, or before the incident, I should say. But I noticed, and I'm not just saying this because you're a fellow journalist, right? Former journalist, is like the writing compared when you did in 2021 compared to this writing, it's almost like it's almost like God played a hand in you writing it, because it just flows.
You're gonna make me cry.
No, the prose is great. You can feel, and this is the thing about great writing. It has to have good detail, and your detail is just so incredible that you put yourself in that spot, right? And when that happens, then you have something special.
Yeah.
And that's what seems like Derek's story is something special.
I totally believe that, and actually, his mom has said, like, God is writing this story, and yeah. So before even meeting him the first time in person, I prayed so hard just that I'm going to see him, not see scars or what's the, after, but just to really see him. And I remember our first meeting was in the cathedral, and Chris was there, and the bishop, and Lisa, Jerry, and Derek. And I'm trying to think if his little sister was there now or not. But I just remember sitting in the cathedral and having this, it was like a very sacred meeting is what it felt like. Like them just sort of like putting their trust in our ability to really sensitively tell this story. And there's this beautiful window in the back of the cathedral. And I saw, like, I'll never forget the sun just shining through. And so I have just really been thankful to be able to tell this story, realizing the impact that it could have. And I think the other piece of it is that we've been able to tell it from a faith standpoint. And that to me is such a critical piece, because God has been involved in this. When you look at the video or you hear from the current story or the initial story, even the surgeon who was there, who met him, those very first moments, the prayer that she said to just be able to intubate him when he needed, she said, I had no landmarks to be able to intubate. And I just stopped and was like, God, if you want this young man to live, you're going to need to guide my hands. And she said it was like first pass, she was able to intubate, and his lungs, began to inflate again. And so God has just been here. And when you, with the story, just when you see like the timing that God laid out before them, when we initially did that story back in 2021, they thought that they were really going to be proceeding fairly quickly. They were at a Cleveland clinic at the time. Okay. So through a series of twists and turns in the journey that God had them on, they ended up, as you mentioned, at Mayo Clinic. Right. And there's a beautiful Catholic chapel on site. So just the way that they were able to pray and be there with the Lord, it just...
Well, and also in the story, too, you relate some of that personal experience. It's almost like you were there. I mean, obviously you were texting back and forth.
Yes. So when they were going into surgery, she texted me beforehand. And so like definitely got all of those updates and just hearing, I remember like messaging her back, are you able to sleep at all? Like, have you had anything? Like, of course.
You had your journalist hat and your like mom hat.
Yes. And Lisa, if I could just say a few words about her. I mean, what an inspiring mom that she is. Yeah. I just like so many times have thought about like just that image of Our Lady holding the Lord, and just thought of like the way that she has tended to Derek and been by his side and just loved him and supported him. And we heard from some of the medical professionals, not every person has that kind of support, and the support that and the advocating that she's done on his behalf. And there's a story that comes to mind. There's not everything can make its way into in detail into the print stories or even the video stories. But one of the very early nights that she was at Henry Ford with Derek, so it's early on, shortly after the incident. And she said that she was she was in a low place. And she said there was this custodian who was out there, like, who happens to, like, notice her, right? He sees her. And they have this conversation. And he just, with this confidence, assures her that everything's going to be okay. And she said, he told her his name was Joe. And she never saw him again ever there at Henry Ford. And nobody could really tell her much about him. And so you just wonder, like, was it St. Joseph? Was it an angel? Was it someone who was used as an instrument in God's hands here on earth to just be there for her in that moment? But there's just so many beautiful things like that happen in all of our daily lives, right? But talking about their story here today. And so there's just those moments that are so beautiful that I think continue to give strength and encouragement along the way, because this has been a long journey.
Yeah. Well, Erin, you are a talented writer. Can you just tell people real quick what you do now for the diocese?
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. Yeah, so close to it'll be coming up on 2 years. Yeah. I took the job as writer-editor for Little Books. So Little Books are, I think, hopefully many people in our diocese and even beyond are familiar with the Little Black Book at Lent and the Little White Book for Easter and the Little Blue Book during Advent. So get those little blue books. So they're little daily prayer companions that is a scripture meditation on one side, and then the other side is, it could be some sort of interesting fact about our faith or a saint of the day, something that connects to the scripture that you'll read. But what the beauty, I think, of the Little Books, it's something they've been doing for 25 years coming up this next year. I think the beautiful thing is an encouragement to spend some quiet time with the Lord. And I think when Bishop Ken had the vision for these little books, way back when he did, they were needed, but even more so today, doing in quiet time, right? A little quiet time and just really hear God's voice in his word, and then to be given some inspiring or encouraging words to go with that.
Well, I know you send them out throughout the world, and even in Grand Rapids, where I've been for the last 30 years, and my wife would say, like, don't forget to pick up the little book.
Oh, so happy to hear that. Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I know. And then all of a sudden I walk over here like, oh, Little Books is here? I didn't know it was Saginaw, Michigan. That was a national publication.
I know. Many people are surprised when they hear that. And it's a really small office. I got to just give some recognition to the staff there, because really, when you think about millions going out around the world, there's one person who's responsible for the shipping, one person who takes the orders. We have someone helping with marketing, and we have a finance person, and then our wonderful executive director, Stacy Trapani, who keeps us all
she's
moving in a forward moving, and we've got an app now. I'll do a little plug for the app.
Yeah, an app and a podcast. I know. I've been following it.
Watching, yes. So.
Stacey and I actually went to college together. So how about that? How things happen. But the reason I asked you about Little Books and what you do now is because I didn't want to ask you the big question, because I think when I first asked you if you wanted to be a guest on the podcast, you said, oh, okay. And I think because the big question I have, and maybe it's a question that a lot of people out there are wondering, like, a story like this is very personal, right? And you become attached to the story. I know, being a journalist, for several decades myself, there are some stories that just stick with you and you think about them often, even 20, 30 years later.
Yes.
This story will stick with you forever, number one. You know that.
Yeah.
But number two, because it is written with our faith first and foremost, at the front and center of the story, how has it changed you? You're a mom, you have kids. Yeah. How has it changed you and your faith?
Yeah. So I think that one of the first things that it did for me, which I hope is the response for a lot of people, is like, have conversations with the people you love. I have 6 sons. And so when I was hearing the story from Lisa, when she's telling me about how Derek was just this great, hardworking student, a standout athlete at his high school, he was in college and getting straight A's. And so you just think, like, what happened? There's not a lot of answers. So it was like going home and having these talks, like, we have to have open discussion. If something's bothering you, talk about it. That's even something that Derek said in some of the interviews that we did with him, where he's like encouraging people, like, open up, talk about the things that are bothering you or that you're having. I think since we're talking about it was the faith podcast, the enemy wants us to think that we're alone. And when we're alone or when we're isolated, it's easier for us to
believe the lies.
Thank you. So I think just knowing that we're never alone, there are people around you, encouraging, like I said, my own kids, talk. That we all sat down and we watched the video together. We talked about it. So just so that was like, I think I could just when she was sharing the story, I mean, I couldn't really keep it together when she told me her story for the first time. And then I think that going along with that, another moment that I won't ever forget is being in the Pfaff family kitchen and talking with Derek's three brothers. So his sister is a lot younger, and I love her bond with Derek. She's just like such a beautiful supporter, this little mom. She would always send things with Derek when he was going for a surgery operation. But sitting in the kitchen with his three brothers and just, I don't know if it was, I guess maybe I should ask, but it very much felt like it was this very raw and authentic, a raw and authentic sharing. So I remember I was sitting here and the three brothers were sitting here and just like talking to me about what the impact that this has had on them.
Yeah.
And one of his brothers at one point was like, we just want to be able to have a slice of pizza with him.
Right.
And I pray that day is going to come at some point. I mean, gosh, he's come such a long way. I know they're going to have that slice of pizza together at some point. But just, so I think that's probably just feeling like, you know what, this is not an isolated, like, you can't say that this happens to, with what we see when it comes to suicide numbers, the numbers are rising at a level, especially among young people, that it is a crisis.
It is.
And so I think motivation, inspiration for sharing this story and sharing it in the way that we have is one, to just raise awareness, help people to have these conversations, and then make resources available, help to continue to take away stigmas that are out there, because there's no, like, it crosses every distinction of race and gender and class, and I mean, so yeah.
Well, I know you guys have done a great job of including that information in the magazine, so that is there. If you need help or you want to talk, it'll be on this video as well. We'll make sure that information is there. Is there anything last thing you want to say to the family? That sharing, being able to give you that opportunity to share it with the world.
Oh, I love you guys. I do. It's been a real blessing, a privilege, an honor to be able to, that you've trusted me, that you've trusted us to share your story. God is continuing to write this story, and I'm so excited to see what's next. And we'll be here to continue to let people know.
We sure will. Erin Looby Carlson, would you do me one more favor?
How can I say no?
I think the Pfaff family is here, so would you mind sticking around for that interview and helping me? Because you know them a little better than I do.
Yes, yeah. I will get a tissue. And you probably need one again.
All right, folks.
Thank you so much for inviting me to share.
Thank you, folks. Stick around. We'll have more with Erin Looby Carlson. We'll have Pfaff family, and we'll continue to keep you updated here on the podcast, One Heart and Mind.